Since entering politics, Donald Trump has stood out for his ability to make controversial statements that capture the world's attention.
And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way. Giving the Panama Canal is why Jimmy Carter lost the election, in my opinion. Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. Economic force, because Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and it would also be much better for national security. Don't forget, we basically protect Canada.
Among his most recent remarks is the proposal to annex or acquire territories such as Canada, Greenland, and even the Panama Canal. While the idea of renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America sparked more humor than serious debate, mentions of the other territories raised important questions about geopolitical discourse. Trump's use of provocative statements is part of his engagement strategy, especially in the political arena. He frequently rallies his voter base with speeches that emphasize American power and influence, often leveraging bold ideas that dominate media headlines. Of these proposals, Greenland emerges as the most plausible focus, potentially offering a more realistic geopolitical and economic opportunity. In contrast, annexing Canada or taking control of the Panama Canal presents legal and diplomatic complexities that render such ideas completely unfeasible. What's undeniable is that Trump's controversial statements highlight the ongoing importance of geography and territory in international politics, particularly in a world where resources and strategic routes lie at the heart of global disputes. In the context of power competition with nations like China and Russia, controlling locations like Greenland becomes not just a political goal but a strategic necessity to maintain the U.S.'s position in the international system. What many people don't know, however, is that the idea of buying Greenland isn't new. The first attempt to acquire the territory occurred in 1867, when William Seward, then U.S. Secretary of State, suggested the country purchase not only Greenland but also Iceland. This idea came around the same time the U.S. bought Alaska, which was then Russian territory, for just over $7.2 million. At that time, Greenland wasn't a priority, and the U.S. faced other challenges in its territorial expansion efforts. Decades later, in 1946, interest in Greenland resurfaced. President Harry Truman went so far as to offer $100 million for the territory. The reason was clear. The world was at the height of the Cold War, and the island's strategic position, so close to the Soviet Union, made it ideal for monitoring and military bases. As we know, Denmark rejected the proposal. In 2019, Trump revived the topic, but this time the reactions were met with skepticism and even humor. Now that we understand the historical interest of the United States in Greenland, it's time to explore what makes this territory so strategic on the global stage. Greenland's location in the Arctic places it at the heart of one of the world's most contested regions, where the globe's major powers are vying for influence. And the reason is clear: the Arctic is transforming. Global warming is melting Arctic ice at an alarming rate, opening new maritime routes and revealing vast reserves of natural resources. For the first time in modern history, shorter shipping routes between continents are becoming possible, which could revolutionize global trade. Greenland, with its prime location, is strategically positioned to control these routes. The Arctic is also rich in oil, natural gas, and minerals essential for modern technologies, such as rare earth elements. Greenland alone holds deposits of 42 out of the 50 minerals considered strategic by the United States, making it a key piece in America's economic and technological security. It's no wonder the region is drawing so much interest from global powers. While U.S. interest in Greenland has strategic and economic roots, it's important to understand the political and social context of the territory. Greenland is an autonomous region but remains part of the Kingdom of Denmark, which also includes the Faroe Islands. This means that, despite its high degree of autonomy, Greenland still relies economically on Denmark, which subsidizes the territory with about $500 million annually. In recent years, Greenland has sought greater independence. This aspiration is driven by a desire to separate politically from Denmark and take control of its own natural resources. However, the population is extremely small, around 57,000 inhabitants, and infrastructure is limited, making the prospect of full independence a significant challenge. Even if Greenland were to become independent, it would face a series of dilemmas. As one of the least populated territories in the world, the island lacks the financial and human resources to properly exploit its natural wealth. This creates an opportunity for larger powers, such as the U.S., which could invest in the territory in exchange for access to its resources and strategic location. From Denmark's perspective, Greenland represents more of an economic burden than a strategic asset. Maintaining the territory requires substantial investments, while the benefits remain limited. On the other hand, relinquishing Greenland could be seen as a political failure and weaken Denmark's role on the international stage. This political and social context is critical to understanding why a potential negotiation involving Greenland would be complicated, though not impossible. Of course, any move in this direction would need to involve the Greenlandic people, who would have to decide through a referendum whether they prefer to remain part of Denmark or consider an agreement with the United States. In addition to maritime routes and natural resources, Greenland plays a crucial military role. Since the Cold War, the territory has been a strategic point for the United States, primarily due to its location between North America and Europe. One of the most important bases in this context is the Thule Air Base, located in northern Greenland. Thule was built at the start of the Cold War as part of an advanced defense system. Today, it remains vital to the U.S. It houses radar systems capable of detecting ballistic missile launches from Russia, providing the U.S. with an early warning advantage. Greenland's strategic location is also significant for U.S. naval operations. The GIUK Gap, the connection between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom, is a critical passage for Russian submarines trying to access the Atlantic. Controlling this area allows the U.S. to monitor and restrict military movements by rival powers, strengthening its position in the North Atlantic. Additionally, as the Arctic ice melts, new threats and opportunities are emerging. The opening of commercial routes also facilitates the movement of nuclear submarines and other military operations. Controlling Greenland would give the U.S. a privileged position to patrol and protect these areas while complicating access for rivals like Russia and China. While we discuss Greenland's strategic role, it's important to note that it's not only a point of interest for the United States. Other powers, such as China and Russia, are also eyeing the Arctic and its resources, though their objectives and strategies differ significantly. This competition highlights how the region is becoming one of the most contested arenas in global geopolitics. China's presence in the Arctic has grown subtly but effectively. Beijing refers to itself as a near-Arctic nation, a claim that may seem unusual but is used to justify its growing influence in the region. China is investing in technology, infrastructure, and partnerships with Nordic countries while promoting the concept of a polar Silk Road. This route would shorten trade distances and strengthen its role in global commerce. China's interest in Greenland ties directly to its vast natural resources, including rare earth elements, which are critical for high-tech industries. On the other hand, Russia takes a far more direct and militarized approach. With the largest Arctic coastline in the world, Moscow has been heavily investing in nuclear icebreakers and military bases throughout the Arctic region. Greenland's proximity to maritime routes controlled by Russia increases its strategic relevance. Moreover, Moscow has been expanding its activities in the region, positioning itself as the United States' main competitor in Arctic dominance. The contrast between these strategies and the American approach is striking. While China and Russia have clear and consistent plans for Arctic exploitation, the United States, until recently, showed signs of lagging behind in its strategy for the region. Trump's proposal to acquire Greenland can be seen as a sign that the U.S. is finally recognizing the Arctic's importance, though the idea has sparked more debate than concrete action. What's at stake here is who will define the rules in a region that is literally transforming as the ice melts. Greenland, as a central piece in this dispute, symbolizes a new chapter in the competition among global superpowers. But if Greenland is so important, the big question is, how could the United States acquire or expand its influence over the territory? There are three main scenarios: direct purchase, cooperative agreements, or a more aggressive approach such as forced annexation. Each of these options carries significant diplomatic, economic, and political implications. The first and most widely discussed possibility is a direct purchase. Historically, the U.S. has made territorial acquisitions, such as Louisiana in 1803 and Alaska in 1867. However, Greenland's situation is different. Today, the territory is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, and while it enjoys significant autonomy, a purchase would require the approval of both Greenland and Denmark. Additionally, the cost would be enormous, with estimates ranging from $90 to $100 billion. This figure doesn't include the investments necessary to develop infrastructure and exploit the territory's resources. The second possibility would be expanding U.S. influence in Greenland through cooperative agreements. Currently, the United States operates the Thule Air Base in the island's north, thanks to an agreement with Denmark. This type of partnership could be expanded to include additional bases or joint infrastructure projects. Such an approach would be less controversial, preserving Greenland's sovereignty while addressing U.S. strategic interests. The third option, and by far the most controversial and least likely, would be forced annexation. While Trump mentioned this possibility rhetorically, any attempt to militarily occupy Greenland would be disastrous. Denmark is a NATO member, as is the U.S., and attacking an ally would violate the core principles of the alliance led by America itself. Additionally, this would destabilize the international order, setting dangerous precedents for territorial disputes in other parts of the world. In the most realistic scenario, the U.S. would need to negotiate directly with Greenlanders, especially given the island's independence movement. If Greenland chose to separate from Denmark, it would have the freedom to sell the territory or enter into broader agreements with the U.S. However, a key question remains. Even with independence, would Greenlanders be willing to give up their sovereignty in exchange for American investments and security? These scenarios show that, while the idea of acquiring Greenland might seem straightforward, in practice, it is complex and fraught with diplomatic and economic challenges. To understand the next steps in this story, it's essential to examine the island's internal context and how its residents perceive these discussions. Despite its immense strategic importance and abundant natural resources, Greenland faces significant challenges, such as economic dependence, limited infrastructure, and a small population of just 57,000 people, as mentioned earlier. Since 2009, the local government has taken greater control over its internal policies, including the management of natural resources. However, the island still relies on Denmark for funding, receiving around $500 million annually to support basic services such as healthcare, education, and security. This financial dependence is a significant obstacle for movements advocating full independence. While most Greenlanders support the idea of independence, many acknowledge the challenges of sustaining the territory without Denmark's financial and political support. Natural resources like oil and rare earth elements are seen as a potential solution, but exploiting these riches requires significant investment and raises environmental concerns. This creates a dilemma for the inhabitants: pursue full autonomy or maintain ties with powers that can ensure stability. The United States enters this equation as an attractive option for some Greenlanders. American investments could transform the island's infrastructure, creating jobs and strengthening the local economy. However, this raises questions about sovereignty. Many residents fear that by becoming too closely aligned with the U.S., Greenland might lose its cultural and political identity. The truth is, until this documentary, Greenland may have seemed like just a large ice-covered island. However, as we've explored here, it's much more than that: a strategic territory at the center of geopolitical disputes involving the world's major powers. From its economic potential, with vast natural resource reserves, to its importance for Arctic maritime routes and military operations, Greenland plays a crucial role on the global stage of the 21st century, particularly in the icy seas. For the United States, securing influence over Greenland is a way to consolidate its position as the world's leading superpower, especially at a time when nations like China are expanding their presence in the region. However, the means by which this influence is achieved, whether through purchase, agreements, or alternative strategies, remains uncertain and fraught with diplomatic challenges. On the other hand, Greenland's future also hinges on the decisions of its people. The pursuit of full autonomy and sustainable development is a delicate process, especially for a territory so economically dependent. The choices Greenlanders make in the coming years will shape not only their destiny but also the balance of power in one of the world's most contested regions. Finally, the interest in Greenland underscores an essential lesson about geopolitics. Geography matters a lot. Strategic territories continue to shape relations between countries and define the direction of global power. And in Greenland's case, what might seem like an absurd proposal, such as buying an island, is actually a window into understanding the significant power dynamics at play in our world. If you enjoyed this content, leave a like below, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. I've left another important video for you to watch here on the screen. See you there.